You've probably been told your whole life that that little clay tube on your wall is just dirt. Or worse, a dangerous wasp nest that needs to be smashed with a broom or blasted with insecticide straight away. You've done it before, maybe yesterday, maybe last week, and I'd bet you felt a small sense of relief afterwards, like you'd just dodged a disaster. But what if I told you that by destroying that mud tunnel, you didn't eliminate a threat? You killed a guard who was on duty, protecting your home from an enemy far more dangerous than it would ever be. What you're about to discover is going to change the way you look at that wall, that fence, that window, where at some point a tiny dried mud tube appeared like magic. Because that structure isn't biological rubbish, it's a fortress. And inside it lies one of the best-kept secrets in the insect world. We're talking about the potter wasp, the tiny architect that built, all on its own, with nothing but its own mouth, a defense system that protects your home from something you fear far more than the wasp itself. Here's the first shock. This wasp almost never stings humans. Unlike social wasps that live in colonies and attack in groups when threatened, the potter wasp is a solitary hunter. It has no colony to defend, no queen, no thousands of workers ready to die for the nest. It has only itself and a single goal, making sure the next generation survives. And for that, it doesn't need you as an enemy. But the real plot twist is hidden inside that mud tube. Because in there, in that dark, sealed-off space you assumed was empty or full of harmless grubs, there's a scene that looks like something out of a miniature horror film. The potter wasp doesn't feed its young pollen or scraps of food. It feeds them spiders, live spiders. Paralyzed but alive, stacked inside that tunnel like a perfectly calculated biological pantry. And here's the detail almost nobody knows. Among those captured spiders are often the ones you genuinely fear. Redbacks, white-tailed spiders, young huntsman spiders. Predators that, if left loose around your home, pose a real risk of nasty bites. The potter wasp hunts these targets with a precision no off-the-shelf insecticide could ever match. She isn't the monster of the story. She's the character you mistook for the villain the whole film, when really she was fighting on your side the entire time. Now come with me and see how this hunt actually happens, because this is where the potter wasp stops being merely curious and becomes something genuinely epic. Picture the scene, it's late afternoon. The wasp leaves the freshly sealed mud tunnel, flying low, almost skimming the ground, scanning cracks, wall corners, under plant pots, behind garden furniture. She's using antennae sensitive enough to pick up tiny vibrations and chemical traces left behind by webs. She isn't hunting at random, she's tracking. When she finds her target, often a spider the same size as her or even bigger, she doesn't back off. She strikes with a speed the prey simply has no time to process. In a fraction of a second, she uses her sting, not to kill, but to inject an extremely specific venom, fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution, to do one thing only: paralyze without destroying the tissue. Why does this matter? Because she needs that spider to stay fresh, alive but motionless, like meat in a perfect biological freezer, to feed the larvae that will hatch inside the mud tunnel. She is, quite literally, a builder of living pantries, planning the survival of the next generation with a logistics system that would put most human storage solutions to shame. After paralyzing her prey, the wasp does something that seems impossible for an insect her size. She carries the spider, often heavier than her own body, flying all the way back to the mud tunnel. It's the equivalent of a person carrying an entire car on their back across town, without ever stopping to rest. Once she arrives, she pushes the prey into the tube, lays a single egg on the paralyzed spider's body, and seals that chamber with another layer of mud, perfectly smooth, perfectly watertight. This process repeats over and over, cell by cell, until the whole tunnel is divided into individual compartments, each one stocked with its own supply of living food and its own future offspring. That's why a lot of people call this behavior a natural security system. The potter wasp acts like a silent cleanup crew, methodically removing day after day, week after week, the predators hiding in the corners of your home before they grow up and become a real problem for you and your family. She's a bodyguard who never asked for a wage, never demanded recognition, and works exactly in the spots you'd never think to check. Now picture what happens when that security system gets destroyed. You smash the mud tunnel thinking you've solved a problem, but what you've actually done is interrupt a cycle of biological control that was quietly keeping the population of dangerous spiders around you in check. Without the potter wasp patrolling that patch, the spiders she would have hunted keep breeding freely. They hide in shoes, in garage boxes, in dark corners of cupboards. And without the natural predator that kept them in line, the local population can grow well beyond what's normal. In some regions, studies on biological control have already shown that solitary predatory wasps, like potter wasps, significantly reduce the presence of medically significant spiders in residential areas. When that predator disappears, the balance breaks down, and the species that tend to bounce back hardest are exactly the ones you're most afraid of. There's another detail almost nobody knows. The mud the wasp uses isn't random. She selects soil with a very specific moisture level, mixes it with her own saliva, and builds a structure tough enough to survive heavy rain without falling apart. That same material, once abandoned naturally after the young have hatched, breaks down and returns nutrients to the soil around your home's foundations. She's not just a hunter. On a tiny scale, she's also part of the natural recycling happening right around the place you live. So next time you spot a little dried mud tunnel tucked away in some forgotten corner of a wall, stop for a second before you destroy it. That's not a threat waiting to happen. It's a sealed archive of predators that will never reach you. A defense system built grain by grain with no tools, no help, and no recognition whatsoever. The potter wasp has spent her whole life being mistaken for the villain in a story where, in truth, she's always been the quiet protagonist, working exactly in the background where human fear never bothers to look closely. Next time you spot one of these little mud tunnels, maybe the first question shouldn't be, "How do I destroy this?" but rather, "What has this tiny architect already done for me without me ever knowing?" If this mystery has changed the way you'll look at the next wall in your home, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to uncover the next hidden biological secret right under your nose.